Nasheed on who is Black. We're going to talk about that because Drake segues us into there. Let me play this clip on who is Black, and we can talk about who is Black in this country, and then talk about Myron Gaines.
There's no volume.
And how what appears to be the end of a linguistic journey is often just the beginning. Before we get into the nuances of the different words people of African descent have used to describe themselves, we should probably start with, well, Africa itself. Not just the continent, but the word. Africa is a massive, massive chunk of Earth, and is home to many different cultures that don't necessarily see themselves as belonging to the same group. Indeed, it's the most diverse continent in the world. It is, after all, where our human history begins. The history of the word Africa is contentious, and scholars have been left with just theories. We know the ancient Romans coined the term, but we don't know where they got it from. Still, we get the word Black, and how did it come to be thought of as interchangeable with African? It's important to get into because while the term Black is gaining in popularity today, the term African American actually rose to prominence because it was considered more appropriate than Black or colored. In other words, African American exists because it was once seen as a sort of remedy.
Gray, I know your family goes.
Go ahead.
Gray, sorry, I know your family goes back to Georgia and being sharecroppers. What term, as an African American and I foundationally Black American, do you think is appropriate to be used for Black people in this country? And who is Black in your mind after we watch that?
First, I will respond to that boring video. That video was boring. Pull up Trick Daddy says he's not African. Pull that up while I respond. It's a more entertaining.
Oh God.
But I would say, I remember being in school, like probably seeing a video like that, and people saying African American. But I think like with just regular people coming up to just people or work or school or something, you just said Black. I feel like African American was just like, a school term or, something you said like professionally.
My video was not boring, okay? We had to set the stage here and educate tonight because we about to have a lesson for everybody watching, okay? But I'll play your video about Trick Daddy. I have it pulled up because I'm good at finding things. And let me play it for all those that couldn't keep up in the other video, including Gray.
Trying to figure out how Afro get in front of my motherfucking race. I ain't never been to Afro color. I never been to Africa. Afro or Africa. Never been there. I'm not from Africa. I'm born and raised in Goose, Florida. I'm born in Goose, raised in Liberty City in the Poker Bean Project. Ain't never went to Africa. Ain't thinking about going there. And I heard it's a beautiful place. Yeah. And I know it's the motherland. Yes. But not my mother, not her mother, and not her mother's mother. That ain't their land. America, real true land is right here in the U.S. soils.
So 85 or vulgar or 85 here, you're back. I'll let you go next because I know you're probably going to have a lot to say. And I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Gray. What should Black people in this country identify it as, and who is Black in America?
Again, I say African American. That's the proper way to say it. I don't think you have to be from Africa to say you're African American. I think everybody's from Africa of some sort, to be honest with you. I don't really care about the color, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, again, those are just those trigger words that I'm always mentioning. And we always go back to the race. How do we get rid of racism? We got to stop talking about it. It's hard for me to get into that because I never see color. I don't even know I've never even been affected because of my color. You know what I mean? If I have, it didn't affect me in life. You know what I mean? It affected me at that moment. It didn't do anything mentally to bring me down or make me think that I was less than. So it don't really matter. I'm an American citizen and I love being an American. Am I from the streets of New York? Absolutely. Do I got a little slang? Absolutely. But there's no way I'm going to be triggered by another white person calling me the N-word. That doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? Because if he says, or if somebody calls my phone and says, hey, you've been called the N-word 32 times, So now we're going to take this much amount out of your bank account this month. If that was the case, absolutely. Nobody can call me the N-word. Okay, but until then, it doesn't bother me. Yeah, I'm a N-word with his own business that has the ability to employ other people. That's a phenomenal N-word if you ask me. And I'm cool with that. You know, so African American, N-word, black man, I'm that dude. I'm cool. I'm cool with it all.
What about you, Vulgar? Then we'll go to Jay.
Say, repeat the question, just so I have a.
So the question is this. Now, race is a social construct. I will agree with that. But the question is this. Who is considered black in this country? Part one. Part two is what you as a technical black man in this country, what do you like to be called? Bulgar said, 85 said African American. Gray, what did you say?
I said black is just what you say with people, and African American is professional.
Okay.
I'm gonna say with me, so I'll tell you my real name is Charles, right? So I get called Carlos, Chucky, Chuck, whatever, whatever else
You said you were
I
Cuban,
get
I believe
called
it.
that, right? So I don't particularly care if it's black, African. I know a lot of people. I was actually I thought my name was the N word until I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Growing up in my
Why? Your
house,
family said
I
it?
was called little this, get your little this over here, little N over here. So
This is your
me,
family?
yeah, oh yeah, hood, yeah. KC has a hood, so yeah.
Hey,
But
that's normal, Nora. Just to be honest with you, I hate to say that, but that's normal.
We never said that word in my house. If you said that word in my house, you were in trouble. And I grew up in a
oh,
Jamaican household.
it is prescribed in our household. But so I don't really have a issue. So I separate. I kind of feel like 85 feels. It doesn't bother me. It's not that big of a deal because, like you said, it doesn't determine where we at. It do in a sense because people do look at you a certain type of way. I do realize that being black, African American, my skin is dark. I'm going to have a harder time. I like I have my favorite black hoodie. I'll walk in some places, they look at me weird until they hear me talk or they see my mannerisms. They're looking at me. It's just going to happen. It is the way the world is designed. Some of it is the media and the movies they put out. A lot of it we put on ourselves. We try to claim racism, but a lot of this
Hmm.
racism we've actually put on ourselves by glorifying New Jack City, all these other movies, the West Coast gang banging. So for me, I realize that's there. I don't let it determine. I'm not worried about how somebody feel. I know I got a harder road. Everybody, what they say, you get lemons, make lemonade, or deal with the cards you're dealt. That's how I look at it. I just deal with the cards I'm dealt. It doesn't mean that much to me. I'm going to fight and be successful regardless. So I don't really have an issue with any other words. I think people put too much influence on those words or what people should be called. But I do think there is. So you have African Americans, which are people who are descendants of Africa, and then you have black. Like I always say, black is a culture. I think the reason why it's a big issue is because we mix the two. We mix what people are versus what the culture is.
And Jay, so before you respond, like I know with Hispanics, it's kind of like the same thing. Like some people feel like Dominicans supposed to say that they're black or whatever. So you could talk about also like the separation with different countries or cultures with Hispanic people as well as the African American stuff.
Well, I always thought of Dominican as like the nationality and like black as the ethnicity. So you can be a black Dominican. Um, but what I will say though, we're all victims of white imperialism because that's what it all is. The confusion is because white people named everything. Why people in the Philippines hate the name being called the Philippines because it's named after Prince Philip of Spain. They've never called themselves that. There's never been a culture called the Aztecs. White people misnamed it. They were called the Mexica, and they thought they called them the Aztecs because their like afterlife was called Aztlan. But there's never been a culture called the Aztecs. So just you can pretty much blame like so much confusion on just white imperialism, and I just think every culture suffers from it still to this day.
I gotta
Um,
disagree with that.
it's true. It's absolutely, you can't argue
I,
it because it's true.
the whites who came here won. They won. They took over, so they get that. They get that right. They get that spoil.
That,
I
but
don't.
there's no
I don't
that
want to. I think when you say
you have
that,
to
it sounds
rename
like a
yourself
big. It
because
sounds. It's sounding we're supposed to be victims to that. That's why I don't like that. Like,
not victims of it, but we also suffer from it. Like, the one of the biggest reasons for conflicts in Africa and even in the Middle East is because white people came and drew cultural lines where none existed before, or they grouped a
but
bunch of people together that never were grouped together because it was convenient for them. So many
we
countries
like
exist because it's convenient for white people.
Africa, the culture they allowed that when they
They
start
allowed
sending
it
their prisoners, and then when they were prisoners, they wanted to
because
go
they
to
didn't
war with each
because
other, and
they
the
didn't
ones who
have
lost
guns.
got sent over as slaves
They totally allowed it. Yeah.
for iron.
That,
Africa
that's
allowed
that,
that.
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the only reason why you have so much conflict in so many parts of the world is because basically the British most likely took a pen and circled a bunch of people together and said, "You all live together now. You're all the same culture," and they never
But
were.
they won. We should have won. Like we can't. The British did. It didn't be victim. We're not victims. We got to fight. All this is fight. We fought. They won. When you win, you
I'm
get to
not saying
celebrate. You have your parade when you
so you can
win.
just name people whatever you want.
Yeah, if you win,
Yeah. If you win.
Well,
the white people won. They came over to America. The Indians couldn't defeat them, so they made 50 states.
what I would say, because I want to respond because Slim was like, you gotta we should like never talk about it. But I think people never talk about like the positives of certain things. Like let's look at like
Right.
what's happening to Mexicans right now. But most people I know, Mexican food is their favorite food. Like is with white people. Like
That's the positive.
well, I'm saying like the
Your
culture of
friends.
someone's culture.
They could have got
Like
Mexican food. It could have been here
like
anyway. Mexican food was
but
already here.
but what I'm saying is like we always down white people, but
Like I said, the
white
border we
people.
didn't cross the border. The border crossed us.
I understand what you're saying, and I was gonna say that to you too. That you should come at 12 p.m. It's a
You
lady.
should have came,
Yeah,
Jay.
yeah, yeah. It's a
This
lady.
indigenous lady educated us today, and she told us, "Oh, Boger, get this." She told us that the Mexicans that are here belong to here, and we shouldn't deport them because technically this is their land.
Nah,
I think that people of
that's not
indigenous
how that
descent
works.
have a right to all of North America.
Because guess
Yeah,
what?
you have to talk.
Those
And
Mexicans, those
we
Mexicans.
told her about
Go ahead.
you. They're activists. We said, well, we have someone of Mexican descent on the cast. We
What
told
we
her
did tell
about
her.
you, but they're like fully committed to this. I'll send you her page. But
So,
go ahead, Booker.
here's the thing. Okay, so America's still expanding, right? Maybe y'all witnessed this. A few places that I live, Atlanta is one of them. Atlanta keeps expanding out, right? So when you start to
Right.
cut down tree, grass, and you build new subdivisions, there are like rattlesnakes, snakes, and all that kind of stuff there, right? So because we cut
Wait,
all
you're not
that
comparing
down, the snakes.
snakes
Should
very
we let the
hard.
snakes live in our homes, in the toilet, in the plumbing?
Are you comparing humans to snakes?
Or should those snakes have fought to keep us out?
You are
I'm
right.
just
I'm just
saying.
clarifying. I'm just clarifying for everyone.
I'm just saying. If you take
I'm just
over a
Oh
clarifying.
my
territory,
God.
Just say yes, right?
you
That's what
can't
you say.
keep saying.
Let's bring it back to the topic at
All
hand.
right, all right, all
Let's bring
right.
it back.
I'm gonna
Let's
stop.
bring
I'm
it
gonna
back because there's a lot we got to
Oh
cover.
yeah, yeah. Go
So
to the next video. We get
let,
off
All right,
track.
go
Go
let
to the
me
ahead.
party of
share
Jesus.
Yeah,
my
yeah,
take on this, please, because this is personal to me. So
yeah.
I ask all that because as a little girl growing up, I grew up in a Jamaican black household. You would never know from my light skin that I grew up in a black household. So I personally experienced racism on both ends. And I know that's probably hard for some people to understand, but I
Colorism.
will never forget it. At 6 years old, a little black girl at my school told me, "You little C word." I don't want to say it. And she called me that. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, I'm not a C word because I knew what it meant. And nobody in my family was white. And I'll never forget seeing the KKK riding down the street and experiencing it, and my black grandfather, and then what they said to him, they called him the N word. So I say all that to say I've experienced it on both ends. 85, I'm glad you've never experienced it. Bulger, I'm sorry if you have. Gray, I know you have
You mean
personally
CUNT or
from
cracker?
past experiences over the
When
years
we
as
get done,
Brown.
I got a story.
You mean
When we
CUNT
get done, I
C-word
got
or
a
cracker?
story.
What'd you say?
What C-word do you mean? CUNT or cracker?
That one, the second one.
That's not bad. That's not a slur.
Yes, it is a slur.
You know how I know it's not
It
a slur?
is a
Because I
slur.
can say it right now and everything's fine. When we can't,
We're
when we
not
can
on
say one
TikTok.
word, when we can say one word on TV and another word on,
Yeah,
we can't.
TikTok.
You know, when we
Well,
can say one word and
it is a slur, and I don't want to be offensive to our white fans because it is a slur. It is a racial slur. In my mind, it is, and it is offensive.
there's like a minor league team that calls themselves the Crackers, isn't there?
Yes, but I think that they
Hey,
are offended by that word.
y'all know
85,
that
do you think
y'all know,
that they are? I know you have a lot of white friends.
I got a lot of white friends, man, but it's funny that we talking about this because I was talking to somebody else about the Cracker Barrel, and the history behind the Cracker Barrel is crazy. And during the whole Black Lives Matter, they just missed that whole restaurant. But I don't.
We love
I'm
the
just
Cracker
thinking
Barrel.
about that. Yeah, I love it's
We
so
love the
good.
Cracker
But
Barrel, man.
no cap, if you look up the history behind the Cracker Barrel, you might get offended. Just saying.
Absolutely. And again, the reason why, so now let me fast forward to today. So the latest offensive thing for me as a child of immigrants is this whole foundationally Black argument. As a child growing up in a poor Black household, I was told multiple times in my life, like I told you, the experience, my grandfather was called the N-word. He was called the N-word. They didn't care he was Jamaican. They didn't care that he was an immigrant. They just saw him as the N-word. So to now fast forward today, and I hear people say, you're not Black because you're from Jamaica, or you're not Black because you're from Africa. It offends me greatly, deeply. And I don't care, chat, you can come for me. Everybody rewatching this, you can come for me. But that's how I feel. So I'm going back